Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you for coming to the discovery of a brand new cutting edge security software that solves a problem that MSPs know they need to address, but haven't had a solution for. My name is Tanya Gentry. I'm the Chief Sales Officer for Big Red Media at MSPsuccess, a TMT company. And I have the pleasure of having Amit Dhillon, Vice President of Marketing with Phoenix Technologies on here that's going to run through everything with you today and a couple of his special MSP guests. And I also, I see Allison Fulber on here, our Editor-in-Chief. Hi, Allison. I didn't know you were joining us on.
I didn't know you were going to call me out for being on. I'm
Yeah.
not ready for this. Hello, everyone.
Good,
I was
good,
good
to see you, Allison.
I know. Good to see you too, Amit. Yeah, I mean, I'm here. I've been working with Amit, and the team for a couple months now, just learning more about, Phoenix and FirmGuard and what they're doing. And, like you mentioned, Tanya, I'm on the magazine side. And so, we're always kind of looking for new technologies, new solutions. And so I was curious to be on here to see how it went. Yeah, like I said, I literally have my lunch sitting right here, so I wasn't ready. So I'll give it back to you, but I'm here to support you, Amit. And I'll help answer some questions in the chat too. And just here in the background.
At this point, FirmGuard so well, I should probably let you do the presentation.
No, I got my salad to eat.
Yeah.
Right. I won't put you on the spot.
Yeah. All right, I'll be in the background.
All right.
Well, a couple things before I hand this over to Amit. Let's do some housekeeping. One, yes, this will be recorded and it's going to be sent out to everybody that's on here after the fact. Also, too, after we go through the presentation and the panelists answer a bunch of questions and go through a little demo, we will have Q&A. So please, please, please put any questions that you have in the Q&A box. I know people put them in the chat too. Sometimes we miss those. So want to make sure if you've got a question that you put it in the Q&A box, and we'll definitely make sure that that gets answered at the end of this webinar. So awesome. Meet, take it over.
All right. Thank you, Tanya. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides. But before that, I want to introduce a couple of special guests I have on with me. First of all, these are both MSPs, current FirmGuard customers, and you'll hear from them in great detail shortly. I want to introduce Ben Gilbertson. So Ben is an executive vice president at Healthy Technology Solutions, which is an MSP based in Las Vegas and in Florida. And Healthy Tech has over 2,000. Yeah, you heard that right. Over 2,000 endpoints installed on FirmGuard to date, and they're continuing to add more. Say hi, Ben.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, looking forward to it. As I say, Ben and Jesse will be on to talk a little bit about their experience shortly. And then I've got Jesse Judkins. Jesse is an IT operations specialist at RQM Consulting. And RQM is an emerging and fast-growing MSP based in Oklahoma. And RQM has installed FirmGuard on all of their business clients' endpoints. So really, at this point, they've adopted FirmGuard as a part of their tech stack, and we'll talk about what their tech stack looks like in a little bit. And again, I'm Amit Dhillon, Vice President of Marketing here at Phoenix Technologies. And let me make sure I'm in slideshow mode. Hopefully, everybody can see that. So, I want to start off. If you're of a certain age, this logo up here in the right corner, Phoenix Technologies, you may be asking yourself, where have I heard that before? Where have I heard of that company? So the answer is yes, we are that Phoenix. So, if you were building PCs in the 80s and 90s, this splash screen right here, might bring back some memories. For those of you that are young, like Jesse, who probably hadn't heard of Phoenix Technologies, probably he wasn't even alive in the 80s. Let me introduce you to the company a little bit. So if there's one thing that I can say definitively about Phoenix, it's that we know firmware. And why do I say that with a fair amount of confidence? That's because we were founded back in 1979. So we were essentially, I think it's fair to say, we were probably the one that came up with the original firmware. At least when it came to IBM clone compatible computers, for those of you that are old enough to remember that. So we've been around for a long time. You can see this is a sort of a who's who of various OEM, silicon vendors, Microsoft, and so forth. These are folks that we've been working with for decades now. We've got a huge patent portfolio. And then I think very crucially, we're a co-founder of what's known as the UEFI Forum. And that's actually how you pronounce that, UEFI. There are some people that call it UFI, which is also acceptable, but the UEFI Forum. And simply put, the UEFI Forum, you can think of that as the standards body for modern firmware. So if you've got a Windows laptop, server, desktop, what have you, it should have UEFI firmware in there. If it doesn't, that's a very bad thing. And that's something that FirmGuard is going to help you detect. And so we co-founded the UEFI Forum. We actually also chair the UEFI Security Response Team, or USRT. That is actually the team that gets the very first input when there are new vulnerabilities discovered by not hackers, but researchers or industry or corporates. So again, we know firmware. And so, hopefully everybody has a sense of why they're here, but, here's who this webinar is really geared towards. It's really any MSP who's in charge of security for their clients. And I think in this day and age, that's probably everybody. And especially if you're doing compliance kind of work. So NIST, CMMC, or any kind of compliance. And in fact, Jesse and I are going to talk in a little bit about one of his clients that has some real compliance needs. And the reason why that's important is because firmware, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, is really becoming, if not front and center, it's becoming a key part of compliance. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And here are the three things that you're going to get from this webinar. So you're going to learn why monitoring and protecting BIOS at the firmware level is critical, why you need to do something about it right away, and then how do you do that? What is the mechanism by which you do that? And then I'm going to talk about this in detail towards the end of the presentation, and I think Allison kind of alluded to this, but everybody that's on the call right now, if you would, I'd love you to put your phones down or whatever and go to a browser and just type in firmguard.com/TMT. I'll give everybody sort of a moment to do that. And the reason why this is important is because, one of the key things from my presentation today is this free secure check audit. And really it's totally free. It's 30 days, and I'm going to talk about it in detail in a moment. But while I have you pull that up, take a look at it, scan it, and then I'll explain to you what the thing's about. All right. So if you're not doing this one thing, you might be unknowingly putting your clients at risk. And so, as an MSP, I know everybody's driven to protect their customers from hackers and the like. And you want to protect your client's network from end to end. And however, for the majority of MSP, there's one huge glaring hole in the security stack. And perhaps it's one that you didn't even recognize. But if you don't do something about it, you're really putting your reputation at stake and really your integrity. And in some sense, you're even inviting your competition to come in and steal your customers. So sounds pretty dramatic, but what is this glaring hole in the security stack? The answer is it's BIOSFirmware. So I'm willing to bet, I put 99% up there. 99% of small businesses are just not protected at the BIOSFirmware level. And I'm willing to bet probably every MSP that's on this call falls under that category. Your clients are not protected at that level. And so let's talk about that for a moment. What do we mean by BIOSFirmware? So the title of this slide is Firmware is Foundational. And I think that's sort of a very appropriate way to start. So let me step back for a second for those that are not familiar with what firmware is. And by the way, you'll hear me use the term BIOS, UEFI, UEFI firmware, BIOSFirmware, firmware. It's all the same thing. These are just different ways of talking about the same thing. And it is that software that when you press the on button, the power button on your favorite laptop, or probably the machines that you're on right now watching this, the moment you hit the on button, the very first piece of software before anything else that comes up is the BIOS firmware, the UEFI firmware. And Most people don't realize that, because you're used to talking about operating systems and applications and so forth, but you don't realize that the very first software that comes up is the BIOS. And it's critical, because what it does is it comes up, it surveys the system, looks at the physical hardware, makes sure everything is hard drives and so forth are operating appropriately. And then it actually kicks off the operating system. So until the BIOS has made sure everything is working properly, the operating system doesn't come up. So think about that for a moment. If, you can see this dramatic hacker picture I have here, but just imagine if a hacker were to take over the BIOS firmware of your endpoint. That person can launch any operating system they want. And you can bet your bottom dollar that they're going to launch some sort of rogue operating system that's going to do all kinds of bad things. And that's clearly not something that you want. So I think this sums it up pretty well. So imagine knowing for certain that not only is every layer of your client's network truly protected, but that now you can say with certainty that you're protecting your clients better than any other MSP. That is really the pledge of FirmGuard. And so, I'm sure everybody out there, no doubt in my mind, offers EDR, MDR type of solutions to protect the operating system and the application layer, but almost nobody offers anything down to BIOS firmware level. So in some sense, you're ignoring 1/3 of the tech stack from a security perspective. So I often get asked this question, okay, great, there are vulnerabilities in BIOS firmware. What are they? I'm not that familiar with them. So this is not a comprehensive list, but this is an example of some of the more recent ones. And they go with, interesting names. I'm not quite sure who names them, but names like Pixie Fail, Logo Fail, Black Lotus, and so forth. And so I don't want to go through all these in great detail, but I do want to sort of talk about Black Lotus for a moment. This is one that came out, I think, almost exactly a year ago. I think it was May a year ago. And it's one that Microsoft talks about quite a bit. And the reason I want to talk about this is because this is one that if you had FirmGuard, the symptom of this, or what Black Lotus does, you would know about it right away. So in other words, if something was infected with Black Lotus and you had FirmGuard, you would know it. And so what does Black Lotus do? So Black Lotus goes in and it bypasses something called secure boot. And it doesn't matter what secure boot is, just know that that is a mechanism in Windows to make sure that the appropriate operating system is, or authentic operating system is launched, not a rogue one. And so again, if you can bypass secure boot, that means you can launch any operating system you want, and then you've got the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, at that point. And so I'm going to show you this in the demo towards the end here, but you will be alerted on the dashboard right away if secure boot is disabled on a given endpoint. And then if you want more information here, you can go down to firmguard.com/security notifications, our website, and we have a comprehensive list of various security notifications, including, of course, the ones you see here, with links to HP and Lenovo, whoever the relevant OEMs might be. And this is something that I want to spend a moment on. This, in my opinion, is kind of a watershed moment. So I think when history is written about UEFI firmware, this date, August 3rd, 2023, which is not even a year ago, is going to be, I think, the time when UEFI really came up from the government's perspective. So in August 3rd, 2023, CISA, for those of you that are not familiar, it's a cybersecurity and infrastructure security agency, U.S. federal agency that's really there for cyber defense, issued this warning. And I'm quoting directly from if you were to click on the blog post down here, which I would encourage everybody to read. If you just go to Google and type in CISA UEFI, it'll come up. I'll read this quote because I think it's really important. So adversaries have demonstrated that they already know how to exploit UEFI components for persistence, and they will only get better with practice. They specifically call out UEFI, which again, when you hear that, you should think, oh, okay, he's talking about BIOS. And if you read this blog, they mention the term UEFI, or the acronym UEFI, 42 times in that post. So this is squarely focused on that. And this is them basically saying, look, all you MSPs out there, IT professionals all around the world, you've got to pay attention to UEFI because the hackers are coming. And if you're not ready, we all know what happens. And then I want to key in on one word that they use here. It's persistence. They use that word very deliberately. And the reason is because one thing that's so pernicious about UEFI or BIOS attacks is that you could reload the operating system, right? You could reload Windows. You could even pull the hard drive out and put in a new one. But if the UEFI firmware is infected, it's not going to make any difference because the UEFI firmware is persistent. It actually sits physically on flash memory on the motherboard of your computer. So that's why removing the hard drive or re-imaging the machine doesn't help. So that's why UEFI is so dangerous if you get that kind of malware. All right, so it's kind of almost anticlimactic at the moment, but do you know where to get a solution for biosecurity that your clients can afford? And obviously the answer is FirmGuard. No surprise there. All right, so let me take a pause for a moment here. So we've been talking a lot about, generally speaking, firmware, hacks, the danger warnings from CISA and so forth. Now I want to spend a few moments actually talking about FirmGuard itself, right? So hopefully you're convinced at this point that BIOSFirmware is something that you really need to pay attention to. And let me show you what FirmGuard can do for you. So these are 5 features of FirmGuard. So, the nomenclature is it's secure something. So secure check is a feature, secure config, secure wipe, secure sense, secure beat. These are all features of FirmGuard. And when I do the demo a little bit later, you'll see them in action. And I call out secure check very specifically on the left side here. It's a little bit larger because that is the key feature within FirmGuard that you can think of as the base capability. It is all about BIOS firmware security. So these things that I'm talking about, detecting that secure boot is disabled, because of Black Lotus, for example, it's secure check that does that. And I should tell you that it's monitoring the BIOS on a given endpoint, continuously, and it's going to tell you if there's a problem with the BIOS, but it's also going to tell you if other things have happened. For example, the version of BIOS was just updated, right? That's not a problem. That's a good thing. Someone went in and updated their BIOS. It's going to tell you that as well. And that can also be helpful information as well, because now you have a sense of when things have been updated. And then I want to sort of move to the right side here because the product FirmGuard is not just about biosecurity. That is the base capability, and that's probably the main reason why you should do the secure check audit and why you should be using FirmGuard. But there are other capabilities as well, and some of those are listed here on the right. Secure config, which is remote BIOS configuration. Secure wipe, which is the ability to remotely erase an endpoint. Secure sense, which allows you to monitor the health, and then secure beat, which just makes sure that you've got a heartbeat. And so rather than me describe these features to you, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring Ben and Jesse in because they've been using these features for quite a while now. And I'm going to start with secure config. And this is actually a use case that Ben brought to us, I want to say 4 or 5 months ago. So Ben, I'm going to hand it over to you now. And if you would just sort of walk us through at a high level what this was all about.
Sure, no problem. It's a lot of good information. I'm glad I have all of it at my fingertips. So the use case that Amit is talking about that we run into is 4 or 5 months ago, we had a customer open up a remote location overseas, about 13 time zones ahead of us. So getting communication with people is kind of tough, playing that phone tag. And they decided to bring in a couple extra laptops that we didn't get to pre-configure before they left here. Short notice, they told us. And I had one of my engineers working on it, doing all the new computer setups, and got to the point where they couldn't enable BitLocker. So after playing some phone tag and not having much luck of trying to walk someone through going into BIOS and, double checking things, we decided to check out FirmGuard, see if it was available. And sure enough it was. I worked with my engineer here, got the 2 laptops online, got FirmGuard installed, and utilized secure config to simply check a box and enable TPM. From there, it was just a simple save, and the computer did the rest. It rebooted, came back up, and we walked through and enabled BitLocker.
Yeah, and I think if I recall when you and I talked, Ben, your tech at the time wasn't even aware of secure config. I mean, obviously you knew quite a bit about it, and he sort of was lamenting, "Oh, what are we going to do? This is going to be painful because this is a client." I think you said in Asia, right?
Yeah.
And I think he was relieved when he talked to you. I remember you telling me the story. He was relieved when he talked to you, and you're like, "You know what? I think I got a simple way to do this. We don't have to get this particular client online."
Yeah, because they were trying for a while to get in touch with, their IT guy over there to get access to the machine, and crossing their fingers that they could walk him through this process of booting into the BIOS.
Yeah, I think it was either you or Leo that told me that secure config might not be something you use on a daily basis, but when you need it, you really need it.
Yeah, and in this time, it saved us. It saved us a lot of time, a lot of heartache going back and forth. Yeah.
All right, Jesse, let me bring you in on the conversation too with secure config, because you and I were chatting, I think it was just a couple of days ago, and you brought up something very interesting that, to be honest with you, I hadn't even really thought of. So, I think of secure config, and the way we position it is as a mechanism, as Ben talked about, to be able to go in and change BIOS settings, right? Yeah. But relate to me, if you will. You were telling me that you've actually started using secure config as a mechanism to actually learn about the capabilities of the endpoints that you have in your pool, which I thought was very interesting. And I think there was one very specific feature that you saw on some Lenovo laptops. If I'm getting it right, was it bottom cover tamper detection, I think?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So FirmGuard is really cool simply because it kind of standardizes the settings panel that you would see that would be completely different on 2 different models of computer, or even 2 different manufacturers. So you kind of get used to the interface and the drop downs, and it's all familiar to you. So it makes it really easy to poke through and just assess what your computers can do. And oftentimes I find myself saying the words, "I did not know that was an option," because if I had known, it would have been turned on already, because that's kind of a cool feature. So when I was poking through the computers at this one specific client that has Lenovo's across the board, ThinkPads and desktops, I managed to see a checkbox, just a simple checkbox that said bottom cover tamper protection. And basically what that does is, should somebody take the bottom panel off, unscrew it, put it back on, the next time it boots up, it's going to require the BIOS super admin password. So basically the password specifically for the BIOS settings, it'll require that on boot, and it won't let it get past BIOS into the regular operating system, or whatever operating system might have been put into the machine after the tampering was done, swapping out the hard drive or whatever. And had I not had secure config, I probably would have never found that setting, simply because how else would I have stumbled upon it if it wasn't available plain text and a simple, easy to use interface that's right in front of me and readily accessible, right?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think you just saw it as you were going through secure config, and you didn't even you never heard of this before, and you just Googled it, right, to see, well, what is this?
Right, because it requires that the machine has a actual physical switch in the cover, so that should somebody take it off, it flips a switch and changes a 1 to a 0, and the next time it boots up, it'll sound the alarm, right? So because it's a physical hardware matter and not just a software matter, I don't know how else I would have discovered that had I not found it in FirmGuard, or gone and looked up the I don't know, the model number of that specific laptop and found, oh, there it is in the feature list,
Yeah, and this is interesting, because I think the way you were describing this to me, you get a new client, and you don't necessarily dictate what kind of endpoints they have, right? They just come to you and say, okay, we got these 25 endpoints, and they might be HP, Dell, Lenovo, different models, and so forth. And I would imagine a lot of the MSPs are in that same situation, where they've inherited, so to speak, these, let's say, 25 endpoints. They don't know what the hardware capabilities are of them. And I think you're pointing out that by using secure config, you can go in and you can actually see, oh, on this particular endpoint, it's got this capabilities. This one's got that capability. That's, I think, what you were getting at, right? With this sort of
right. Should a client come to me and say, hey, we've got 3 HPs, a Dell and a Lenovo. They're not all laptops and they're not all desktops. Some of them, I think, have fingerprint sensors, and I'd like to make that a across the board a required thing. If you've got a fingerprint sensor, I want you to use it. I don't know if I'd be able to figure that out just with my RMM, and I might just have to sit there and copy paste model numbers into Google and look at hardware specs to figure out if they've got fingerprint sensors. If I just have secure config or FirmGuard installed and I pop up secure config, I can click a few drop downs and find out, yes, this one does and that one doesn't, and I'm flip the switch right now, turn it on, right?
All right. Well, fantastic. No, I'm glad we chatted about that the other day. So let's move on for a moment, and we talked about secure config. Now let's talk about secure wipe very briefly. And Jesse, I know you're going to relate a story we were just chatting about the other day, but for everybody's benefit, just to give you a sense of what secure wipe is, it's quite simple conceptually. So the idea here is that you want to wipe, and when I say wipe, I mean forensically wipe. So make sure a third party could look at the disk and couldn't recover any data. This is not like a factory reset. And so, why might you want to use this? There are different use cases. One could be just a compromised endpoint, stolen. Okay, so you want to wipe the drive. But it could be something even more, innocuous, which is, you've got a client that's got 10 old endpoints. They want to recycle them, donate them to the local library, what have you. But they want to make sure that it's totally clean. All the data is gone before they do that. That's another sort of use case for secure wipe. And Jesse, if you would tell me, I think you were telling me there's a client you talked to, and maybe you don't have to give us the name, but give us a little background in terms of they were very sensitive to compliance. And I believe they were interested in secure wipe, but they wanted to make sure that it met, some compliance standards like NIST 800-88.
Right. This client's got some pretty heavy-handed requirements from their organization as far as cybersecurity goes. So every year we walk through quite a few documents with the auditors, and we go over whether we improved from year over year. We wrote down what we did last year, and then we review what we're doing now. And in this transition from last year to this year, we're actually able to claim a little bit of an improvement on our media sanitization, including the use of secure wipe. So basically, their standard that they're trying to get toward is the NIST guidelines, right? So this is the document that outlines the requirements for should you do a logical wipe of a drive or whatever data holding device. Here are the standards that would constitute a good certificate of erasure, and what information you need to have on this document in order for it to be useful and valid, right? So with secure wipe,
I think that was a key thing you told me, that they really wanted the certificate of erasure, some sort of proof.
Right. It's part of the systems development lifecycle policy they've got. So having a document that lays out how you did it, which device, who did it, when it was done, how it was done, is key to making it a secure process and not just, hey, I gave it to the guy down the street, right? And that's another thing, is the fact that we've got FirmGuard now in-house as our product underneath the RQM Consulting name means that we can do that in-house. No fourth party IT. There's no taking it down the street and just crossing your fingers and hoping they don't have a bad employee that day, right? So we can make it meet our standards. And for another thing, it's automatically documented. We don't have to train and then make a procedure over some product that may change with an update, right? It's going to be the same certificate of erasure every time, just based on the logical process it goes through. And we don't have to worry about inconsistent results there.
Right. All right. Well, fantastic. And I appreciate you you relaying that to us. So, I've taken the slides off. I just want to, guys, have a bit of a chat back and forth, because it's one thing for me to say things, but both Ben and Jesse are active users of the product. So one thing, and Ben, maybe you can start.
Sure.
Give me a sense of, you don't have to go into detail, but the tech stack that you have, maybe the RMM you use, and sort of how FirmGuard or how you've integrated FirmGuard in as part of your stack.
Okay. Yeah, no, I like to think that we have fairly similar tech stack as a lot of MSPs. We have our RMM, we have our MDR, EDR. We're using, Zero Trust for some things, but nothing really covers what we've been talking about. That portion that we can't see, being the firmware.
Okay.
So yeah, that's where this fills the
Okay.
gap.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jesse, I would imagine something similar for you as well.
Right. We've got RMM, EDR, and a Mod Podge of different antiviruses out there. And so far, across all the installations, I've had no issue with getting FirmGuard on the machines. And it seems not to interfere with any of our other products at all. So,
And that's what I love about it. It's not a heavy footprint.
it is.
The agent itself installs seamlessly, and you're off and running. You're getting information within less than a minute after it's installed and registered.
So that's a key thing I want to talk about, Ben. So from an installation perspective, and as we said, you've got well over 2,000 endpoints on FirmGuard. So how did you install, and over what period of time? I mean, obviously, 2,000 took some amount of time, but I believe you installed like a 1,000 plus within a matter of days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. After installing locally here in-house and making sure things did what it said it was going to do, I scripted a few things through Kaseya or RMM, and for the larger clients, and pushed it right from the RMM.
Okay.
I mean, it really was quite simple. It put in the link, it downloaded the agent to the computer, and it ran it.
Okay. So you use your RMM Kaseya to push out the FirmGuard agent.
Yeah. And now I just run a daily script that just says, hey, look for anything that may have been missed.
Gotcha. Okay. So to make sure you've got FirmGuard on all your client endpoints.
Yep. Now it's just a daily procedure.
Okay. And Jesse, I know you're approaching a couple of hundred endpoints, which is, of course, your entire, at least the business base. Similarly, how did you deploy it, and sort of roughly how long did it take to get to that, approaching 200?
Yeah, I also used our RMM. We used Synchro. It was pretty easy. I was able to put the script into Synchro, add a few variables to each customer, because each customer needs their own specific organization on the FirmGuard side of things. So once that was done, realistically, I could have just selected all endpoints, run install script, and it would have organized each one into the right client in FirmGuard just based on the variable that was filled out on their client page. But I did want to make sure and keep our clients running. So I wanted to be a little bit cautious, right? So I've stretched it out over a month, did client by client. But after the end of it, I thought I did not need to spend that much time. I could have just clicked all and done it, but hindsight's 2020.
No, it's better safe than sorry, as they say, right? To take a little bit of time. So,
but not a hiccup at all.
All right, fantastic. And in terms of, probably there's some folks out there that are wondering, is there any sort of special knowledge that you had to have in order to use FirmGuard? I mean, did you even really have to understand what BIOSFirmware is, to use it? I just want to get your sense of, the amount of knowledge you think you had to have to use the product.
No, that's a good thing. You didn't have to understand it. You don't have to understand all the acronyms or the detail, that your team understands.
Right.
You have the agent, you install it, you review the information from Secure Sense all the way down. No extra knowledge is needed.
Okay.
Right. In fact, I even think it brings BIOS closer to a level 1 text knowledge, because not only is the interface standardized, right? It's not Dell's BIOS interface. It's not HP's BIOS interface. It's FirmGuard's interface, right? All the dropdowns look the same. All the menus look the same across manufacturers. So not only that, you don't need to train and make procedures based on each manufacturer, but it also in those panels has explainers, you know, that little bubble with a question mark in it, you know.
Right,
Um,
right.
and that's part of how I figured out what
Tooltips. Yeah, the tooltips.
bottom cover tamper protection does, because there was a little tooltip there and it gave me a nice launching pad to go on a little research binge. But
Right.
it brings BIOS a little bit closer to something I could reasonably make a lot of standardization and procedure around with screenshots and everything, because it's going to be the same every time.
Got it.
And that's what we're looking to as well, Jesse, trying to standardize what things look like, especially when we take over a client.
Right.
Okay. So let's we've talked quite a bit about secure config and secure wipe. Let's talk about secure sense a little bit. And again, I'm going to do a demo here shortly, so it'll make a lot of sense to folks. But Jesse, if you could just give me a sense of how you've used secure sense. And I know you were telling me about a story about BitLocker and the owner of your MSP.
Right, right. So secure sense gives you a little bit more of a real-time view of some hardware utilization metrics. So on the front screen, you get a little bit of a bar graph about your CPU usage and also I think your disk usage. But on the front panel is the dashboard, right? And that pulls in the information from those different panels, including the secure sense panel. And just on the front panel, you can see how many agents detected that BitLocker was not enabled, how many agents detected that secure boot was not enabled, and then one other thing that's in that realm of hardware security and
Legacy.
Okay, yep. And well, my boss came into my office one time and said something along the lines of he was having an issue with BitLocker where it was worrying to him that some may not have it enabled, some endpoints may not have it enabled, and should we enable it, we need a way to check that it's enabled and then also record the key. And before I could go on too much, I told him, hey, FirmGuard's got it covered. Front screen, dashboard, this many endpoints not enabled, right? So right off the bat, that saved me from having to click a bunch of checkboxes inside of the RMM and run scripts, right? It's already been done and accounted for in a way that I could trust that it's an accurate and up-to-date reading of whether it's enabled or not, because should I run a script, the information from it is only as valid as of the day I ran the script, right? If I enable it, I got to run it again. FirmGuard's got that as a constant running thing, and I can get alerts from that. So it's going to make that process of not only checking and seeing if it's enabled or not, but also in the end, making sure that these keys are documented elsewhere, and should the TPM chip fail, we don't have this issue again.
Ben, anything you want to add about secure sense in your experience?
You touched on a little bit there about the accuracy of secure sense. We use a lot of it for parts, matching part numbers, models, stuff like that, for ordering. And this has saved us a tremendous amount of time, making sure that we get the correct part. Not only that, the accuracy that secure sense gives us, it allows us and keeps us from installing any third-party software or freeware that, in the end, really can't be trusted, whether or not it's a CPUV or a SPECI or something like that. I'm sure we all use them in the space, but anymore, why? You don't know what it installs or what it could install, or when it was last updated. So why not just go to a trusted source?
Got it. Okay. All right. So final question, and this is really just you guys, talking to the audience here, which is, obviously a lot of MSPs like yourself. So simple question, in your own words, just, tell folks that are listening to this webinar why you think an MSP should use FirmGuard. Ben, I'll start with you.
I mean, I think we've touched on it quite a bit now. One, you guys are that known trusted source. You guys have been around for 40 plus years. in this space and field for Phoenix, and now you're introducing FirmGuard to only better what you're doing, to be able to read it, configure it, mitigate it, all of that stuff. And that's why I love it. It's taken a lot of the work out of our hands, and that third-party software that normally you would install, or scripting or anything like that. You probably could get some of this information with command lines or anything else, but you're visiting one machine at a time.
Right.
And with future reporting, you're going to get it all together. To me, that's saving time, and it gets you to be more efficient.
Yeah, technician efficiency, I guess, is
right.
a simple way to put it.
Yeah.
All right, great. Jesse, I'll let you have the last word. Let everybody know why should people care about FirmGuard.
Right. I mean, to put it simply, it brings BIOS to my desk without bringing somebody's desktop to my desk. You know what I mean? It brings all this accessibility and all these features to not only directly in front of me without me carrying a hefty machine, but also it's all standardized and it's accessible and it's easy to read and it's easy to understand. It's got explainers, and it just makes it closer to me in terms of knowledge and in accessibility, right?
I'm a marketing guy. I'm going to use that one, Jesse. I like that. Yeah, it brings the endpoint to you, as opposed to you having to go to the endpoint to configuration or whatever. All right, I like that one. I'll give you credit for that marketing message. All right, well, fantastic, guys. I really appreciate that. And Ben and Jesse are going to be here for the QA portion as well. Let me share my screen again here. Just a couple of housekeeping items here before we get to a demo.
So, Amit, before you get to the demo, if you don't mind, if you have a few seconds, I'll share another use case that we had.
Please, Ben, go ahead.
A month ago.
Yeah.
So we had a laptop customer that's having a problem with their camera where it would just go on and off randomly. And, we looked everything up, and it had about 2 days left on the warranty. So we called Dell and started going through everything with them. And they're like, well, we need you to go into the BIOS. We need you to disable the camera. And it was a Friday, obviously, Murphy's Law. And they're like, well, we need you in front of laptop. Plain and simple, we need you to disable that. So I overheard them talking about it. They were mentioning it to our service manager. Hey, we need to go on site. We need to disable the camera. So I spoke up and I was like, which unit is it? Let me see. And sure enough, went into secure config and saw that there was a camera checkbox there. Unchecked it, it rebooted the machine, came back up, and the Dell technician, while on the phone, run their little tool and said, yeah, it's disabled. Okay, great, let's re-enable it. Did that, rebooted, and came back up, and that fulfilled everything they needed. They sent the tech out on Monday. No matter, if we would have waited till Monday to go on site, I'm sure they would have said, oh, your warranty's expired. Nothing we can do, right?
Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? It's a Friday afternoon.
Exactly.
Your warranty is expiring in 2 days. So
yeah. So that's proof right there. It's exactly what they wanted, and we were able to do it remotely. No boots on the ground.
Thanks for sharing that one, Ben. And that sort of dovetails. I know we didn't pre-plan it this way, but that gets really back into the FirmGuard benefits here. Which I wouldn't go through all this. You can read this. There's going to be a recording later, but simply put, Ben, I think, crystallized it. The last one here, technician efficiency. We don't think about that sometimes, right? You're not wasting time going on site, that sort of thing. It also helps to increase your MRR because, I'm sure everybody on this webinar, they charge their clients for EDR and MDR solutions. So this is another part of that tech stack. So naturally, there should be a charge to protect that. And so, simply put, we've been talking about it. One of the big benefits is it closes the BIOSFirmware security gap, and it's a massive gap, and that's emerging. And then I think we shouldn't discount it. It differentiates you from other MSPs. So
it is.
If you can walk in very, very confidently. I mean, Ben and Jesse can testify to this, but you can walk in very confidently to your client and say, look, I've got a unique solution that others don't have. So So anyway, there are, a variety of benefits. Ben, Jesse, if you guys want to comment on that at all, feel free. If not, I'll move on.
No, it speaks to that. If we can get something done in 5 minutes instead of having a technician drive 30 minutes, each way, that time is spent on something else. I mean, learning, working on other tickets, anything like that, the efficiency just goes up.
And don't forget the whole 10-minute process of figuring out which F button it is on the keyboard to get into BIOS. That's not a thing anymore.
Exactly.
That was my main happiness moment, figuring out I really don't have to do that anymore.
There you go. All right, well, fantastic. So I'm going to get to the demo here that I've been promising you in a moment, but I want to now spend a moment here and again reiterate to you, to everybody, to please take advantage of this offer. If you listen to nothing else that I say today, go to firmguard.com/TMT and take advantage of this free offer. You won't be disappointed. You're going to get a sense of exactly what the state of the firmware on all of your client endpoints looks like. And there's no limit. You can install this on hundreds, thousands of endpoints. It's free for 30 days. And you'll get to use all of these features that we've been talking about. So secure wipe, secure check, secure sense, and so forth. This is not limited. It's the entire product. And then, after that period, should you decide that you want to continue using FirmGuard, which I'm quite sure you will, we will offer you, very special pricing for that. So again, this offer expires tomorrow at 7 p.m. PST. So I would encourage you right now, go to firmguard.com/TMT, sign up for it. You will not be you'll not be disappointed. And then off you go. We'll work with you to get it installed. Okay, with that, let me come over here and we'll get to a Q&A right after this, but I wanted to give everybody at least a little bit of a sense of, we've been talking about these features. So, what are they? So this is the FirmGuard dashboard that Jesse and Ben were talking about. And really, I want to focus in on this session. I mean, we could spend, an hour going through this, but I just want to give people a flavor. So this section right here that says endpoint health, that's really the key. And this is the major part of the audit, the free audit that we're offering for 30 days. And so, at a glance, now this is a demo setup here. So, I've only got 10 endpoints deployed. But, as I said before, you're free to take this and deploy it on hundreds, if not thousands of your endpoints. And, you would know, obviously, how many you're deployed on. But this is really the key. So you'll recall that I mentioned earlier a thing called Black Lotus. It's a malware, well-known malware that Microsoft talks quite a bit about. And that malware disables secure boot, which, to refresh your memory, if secure boot is not enabled, then a hacker can launch whatever operating system they want. So if that were to happen, secure boot was disabled on any endpoint that you have FirmGuard on. And it doesn't have to be because of malware. It might just be misconfiguration. Right away, you're going to know. So in my demo setup, I've got 2 that don't have secure boot enabled. That's a problem. I need to fix that. So I just very conveniently click here. It takes me to those 2 endpoints, a Dell and a Lenovo. I'll pick on the Lenovo here. And you can see secure check. Again, that's the security aspect of the product. You click on that. You see there's a critical alert here. You click on secure check, and sure enough, there's a warning. Secure boot appears to be disabled. Okay, great. Glad you told me. That's really, really important. That's, more than half the battle. But, there's a next step that you could go to, which is what Ben and Jesse talked about, is you click here on secure config, this tab, and you can see we show you all the various settings that are BIOS settings that are available on this Lenovo. I believe this is a desktop. And there are a ton of them. You can see, you can scroll on and on and on. And this is what Jesse was talking about. He was just scrolling through these, and he happened to find that that one he talked about, the bottom tamper resistance. But in this particular case, I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to say, oh, secure boot. Okay, there's a BIOS parameter for that. You know what? Sure enough, it's not enabled. That's why I was getting this critical error. So you could fix the problem. I won't do it because I don't want to reboot the machine, but you could click on this and save it. And now you'd have secure boot enabled. So, not only does it tell you that there's that problem, but also gives you a mechanism with secure config to be able to fix the issue. So, you'll recognize these names: secure send, secure check, secure config, secure wipe. These are the features that I talked about. Let's talk about secure wipe here for a moment while we're at it. So I won't wipe a drive here, live on this webinar, but I certainly could. So you click on secure wipe, and for this particular, Lenovo, running Microsoft Windows 10, there are two partitions. And so I want to emphasize, for secure wipe, you can erase, the entire drive if you want, or individual partitions, or even a USB attached storage. So if you just USB attached, something to an endpoint, you could wipe that as well. And so in this particular case, I'm just going to pick on this partition right here. I'm going to click over here. It says wipe drive. You're then going to get this, and this allows you to select what algorithm, wipe algorithm you want to use. Single passive zeros here, but there are a bunch of them. There's some US Navy standards, a bunch of international ones. I think everybody here is probably in the US, so you may not use these, but German ones, US DoD. So a variety of different standards that you can choose from. I'll just stick with single passive zeros. You click erase, and again, I'm not gonna wipe the drive here, but this is a destructive action. Of course, you're about to forensically wipe this drive such that no data at all is recoverable. I mean, you could hand it to a third party, and they're just not going to be able to recover any data on it. So, obviously, we're giving you a lot of warnings. You have to type in confirm here and move forward. So again, I won't wipe the drive here, but if I type confirm and hit that, it would begin wiping. So that gives you a sense now of secure check, secure config, and secure wipe. Let me go back to the dashboard. So we talked about if secure boot is disabled, you can very quickly figure out what that is. Jesse alluded to this. His the owner of his MSP wanted to know, well, hey, how many of my endpoints have BitLocker disabled? Well, turns out 3 are disabled here out of the 10. So click there. You can see which ones they are. I'm going to pick on this Acer here at the top. And you can see Secure Sense. And this is the feature that Ben and Jesse talked about that gives you a bunch of information about the endpoint. So in real time, CPU utilization, drive utilization. And if you scroll down here, you'll notice, indeed, BitLocker is disabled. That's, of course, why you got the warning. But it gives you a variety of other information, right? The BIOS, when was it built, the model, serial numbers, as Ben talked about. He finds that helpful from an inventory perspective. And then it drills down to, the individual part numbers for, given memory module, for example. And why is that important? We've had some MSPs that build custom machines for their clients, and they put very specific parts in there. They want to make sure that those haven't been swapped out. So this is a great way for them to know that. So that gives you a sense of secure sense there. And then finally, sort of to round it out, the last one that I'll show here, and there are many more. These are just the ones we're showing right now on the dashboard, is legacy boot. And I'll click here, and there's one, and I'll click on it. It's an Intel machine, and you'll see it says legacy. Now, what does this mean? What this means is that when this particular machine was installed, the OS was installed. This is actually an OS level issue. When the operating system, Windows, was installed on here, whoever installed it didn't put it in UEFI mode. They put it in legacy BIOS mode. Why is that bad? That's bad because UEFI is the standard, the safety, the security standard for BIOS. And that's been around for, I think, since 2005. So it's not new. But for whatever reason, this particular machine was installed in legacy mode. That's something you absolutely have to fix right away, because you're just inviting a hacker to come in and take this machine over if you don't do that. So again, very simply, you saw it here, you click, you see you've got a problem with this machine. Now you've got to go figure out how to do that. It's going to take a reinstallation of the OS to do it. And again, this is something without FirmGuard, you'd have no clue. your clients would merely be using these endpoints that are extremely vulnerable to hacks. All right, so I know we're running a little short on time here. Hopefully that was helpful to get a sense of the demo. Let me now stop. Well, I won't stop sharing. Tanya, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah.
I think we've got some questions. I'll leave this up here. Again, for those of you that haven't gone to this, please do. Please take advantage of this. Absolutely free, no cost whatsoever.
Yeah, we do. And we'll get to those. Guys, sign up. I know there's some questions in here. People are talking. It's technical. So go ahead. At least what I would say is sign up. If we don't get through all the questions, you'll be able to talk to Phoenix about all of this. This is free. This is not something that we would push out if it wasn't legit. So, make sure you do that. But yeah, let's get to some of these questions that we have in here. One of the
Tanya, sorry, you invited me on at the beginning as co-host. So this is what you get for giving me the power of a co-host.
Yes.
But a great presentation, Amit, and two MSPs on here. Thank you for bringing your smart brains. I've been spending time with Phoenix and getting to know them and their product. I never claimed to be a technical person myself. I'm in marketing, but as I started learning more and more about what this product can do, I got very passionate about it, and that's why I'm on this webinar, because as I learned more, I was like, every MSP needs to have this as a part of their stack. And I remember talking to, the Phoenix team and me being like, why aren't people doing this? Like, I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. And so, just to kind of echo what Tanya was saying, you got 30 days to try it for free. So, I would definitely go and do that. I would scan, all your endpoints just so at least you can sleep at night knowing that they're safe. And if they're not protected, hey, then you have an opportunity to proactively go to your client and say there was an issue and you fixed it, rather than another MSP coming in, finding the issue, and then pointing you out and you getting caught with your pants down. So I had to chime in. I'll go away now. I've been way too active on the chat too. Again, you invited me as co-host. It's your fault.
Yeah, you're good. There's a lot of really good questions on here, Amit. So we'll keep going, all the way to, till you guys have to fall off. But first one is, why use FirmGuard versus native vendor tools such as HPE, or what is integrated with our existing asset management system?
Sure. Yeah. So, people often ask me, well, what are the alternatives? So you could use, a Dell specific tool. I think it's one called iDRAX that they have. The issue there, of course, is it's very specific to that vendor. So one of the key things about FirmGuard is it's heterogeneous. It doesn't care. You saw in the demo that I did, we have Acers, Asus, HP, and so forth. So if you get a specific vendor tool, if you happen to have every single client or every single endpoint that's from that vendor, yeah, maybe it would work for you. But I think it's probably fair to say, and I can speak for Ben and Jesse, they've got a heterogeneous set. And if you're inheriting customers, you can't dictate to them, you got to use Dell, you got to use HP.
Yeah. Real quick, can you give a quick 30 seconds on the pricing? I know that's come up quite a bit on this, just a little bit of after this 30 days, what does that look like a little bit?
Absolutely. So just to give you a sense, our retail pricing starts at $3 per endpoint in low volume, and it goes down progressively to $1.50 per endpoint at high volume. But for the folks on this webinar, MSP Success, we're going to give it to you for $1.50 per endpoint, irrespective of how many endpoints you have. So
whether I have 500 or 2,000, doesn't matter.
Yeah, or 100, it doesn't matter.
And that doesn't kick it. That won't kick in until I get through this free trial with you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. It absolutely will not kick in until you've tested everything and you've decided, yep, this is what I want. Then it would be $1.50 per endpoint. And I should emphasize that there are no long-term contracts here. That's not how we do business. It's a month-to-month contract. So even after that period, if you decided, hey, I want to use it for a few months, and then you decide, you know what, this is not for me, I don't want to do this anymore, it's month to month, you can opt out. I'm willing to bet good money you won't do that. Once you start using it, you recognize what it's providing you, you're going to probably continue to use it, but no obligation. Stop anytime.
Will just ask what the minimum license count is. I think we're saying there isn't a minimum. Is there a minimum for you guys?
So we do have 100 minimum, but again, if there's somebody that's really keen, come talk to us. We're not going to turn you away because if you're a small MSP and you don't even have 100 endpoints, we'd like to do business with you. Come talk to us. We'll work something out for you.
Like I said, let's go through these. If you guys have time, we'll keep going for a few minutes afterwards. But so
I'll stay as long as you like, Tanya.
Okay. So if FirmGuard is out, is FirmGuard an out of band solution, or does it depend on Windows being online and healthy?
Not sure I understand the question. So there is an agent that has to be deployed on Windows, so very similar to an RMM conceptually. So obviously that agent has to be up and running. There has to be communication between that and our our management server. So yeah, if it's offline, then and maybe the question is, I'll sort of try and interpret. If there's an action that's already been sent to the endpoint and it goes offline, for example, a secure wipe, if that's already been sent, even if it goes offline, it's still going to be doing the wipe. Maybe that was the question. Even if it gets disrupted, as long as the secure wipe was kicked off, it will continue to go.
Yeah, I think some out of band means PC is turned off, I think is what he was asking about, if the PC is turned off.
Right. So you cannot initiate something if the PC is turned off, but if it's already been initiated and it's running, it'll keep running even if they disconnect.
Okay, perfect. Can the FirmGuard be used to update BIOS?
Yeah, this is I predicted Ben and Jesse when we were talking the other day, this question would come up, and it's a great question. So the answer is not at the moment, but in Q4 of this calendar year, so a couple of quarters out, we've got a feature coming out called Secure Update. And the name says it all. That is to allow you to update the BIOS on a given endpoint. Okay. And Ben and Jesse are on me all the time. Amit, when's that secure update coming? I need this. Come on. So it's super, super high on our priority list. So absolutely that will be available. Perfect.
I lost this. Where are we at? Okay. Are we going to get the biggest question? Okay, we got the price. You guys gave that. Is there an option to do secure reinstall? And what would you recommend? Oh, my computer's hating me right now. And what would you recommend for this, if not after the secure remote wipe?
So I'm not sure I understand the question. So secure wipe, of course, as I mentioned, can be used. You could wipe an entire drive if you want, including the OS and everything. If you do that, well, then yeah, you've at that point rendered the endpoint. It doesn't have anything on it, so you'd have to get an ISO image or something and re-image the machine. But you don't have to wipe the OS or the partition that has an OS. You could wipe specific partitions, or as I say, even USB attached drives. We have customers that have some drive that they just want to make sure it's wiped. They attach it and wipe it. I hope I answered the question. I'm not sure I fully understand it.
It's probably my computer and the way that it's showing things right now. But also too, I know, so in fourth quarter, when can FirmGuard manage BIOS updates? Well, that's coming down the pike. Is that right?
That's right. That, as I say, it's a feature called Secure Update. Our engineering team's working on it, and I'll just give you a sense of the way it'll come out. So the very first part of that will be, as you saw on the dashboard, just giving the MSP an idea of which endpoints in their pool doesn't have the latest version of firmware. So that'll be phase one. Just telling you, hey, by the way, out of your 400 endpoints, these 212 don't have the latest version. That's the first phase of it. Second phase will be actually allowing you to go in and actually do the update remotely.
Perfect. Are there BIOS manufacturers or ages of motherboards that aren't protected, and does it work with Macs at all?
So we do not support Mac at the moment. It's Windows only. So it's any Windows server, what have you. On our roadmap for 2025 is not only Mac, but also Linux, as well as we're going to get into networking devices as well, printers and the like. So we've got a very robust vision for the product. And so that's why I'm encouraging a lot of folks, and Ben and Jesse are key people, but get on the bandwagon early, work with us early. This special pricing of $1.50 is going to go away, obviously, at some point here. But if you get on now, we'll lock you in at that price for a period of time. And as things like Secure Update, these other great capabilities come in, if you're locked in the price, you're going to automatically get those. We don't have add-ons, so you get the entire thing. $1.50 gets you Secure Wipe, Sense, all of them. And then as we introduce new features, if you're locked in, you're going to get those as well.
Perfect. Can you do a remote clean install of Windows after the wipe without having to go on site physically after the secure remote wipe?
If I understand the question, no, the product cannot be used to do an install of Windows. I would imagine you'd probably do it. Well, you can't even do it via an RMM if you've wiped out the entire drive. So, yeah, I think the answer to that's no, if I understand the question.
Allison, am I missing anything else? I know you were you were in the chat with it. My computer is loving me right now and it's
Yeah,
glitching all over the place. So I want to make sure we're not missing many questions.
Yeah, there were a couple that just came in, and I want to ask one from the beginning, from Sean, why use FirmGuard versus native vendor tools such as from HPE, or what is integrated with our existing asset management system?
Right. So I think I answered that at the outset. The great thing about FirmGuard,
Yeah,
amongst
already
many
answered.
things,
Yeah.
it's
David's
So
like,
maybe
pay
your
attention,
computer's
Allison.
glitching too, Allison. Yeah.
I'm happy to answer the question again because, but it works across any vendor, so you're not locked into any particular OEM, all of them.
Perfect. Do you see that one from Rodell and Jennifer? So Jennifer, any APIs for integration to other dashboards?
Yes. So this is also a capability that's coming out next quarter. In fact, we get this question all the time. You obviously want to integrate with a PSA and so forth. So again, I would encourage people, come on the platform now, start using it, take advantage of the free offer, get in at the early price. And yes, absolutely, APIs are coming very, very quickly. And I would imagine, the kinds of things you want to integrate with are your alerting systems, PSAs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you guys are channel only, right? Does that correct?
100%. Yeah, we don't sell direct to anybody.
Okay.
We work only with MSPs. That's why obviously we were at boot camp and various other events. That's our 100% channel.
Okay. It looks like we had a couple more coming in here. OEM vendors often pick what drivers they want on their PCs. This may or may not match what chip manufacturer has on their site. IG Intel. I don't know if that's a question or comment, but
yeah, that's true statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Would there be any future releases of having a console connected similar to iDRAC or BMC?
More of that KVM offline access.
Right. Yeah, again, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, so I'm reluctant to provide. But yeah, we've got an entire roadmap of features and capabilities. So again, I would encourage folks, take advantage of the free audit. I'm belaboring the point, but get the ball rolling, get that special price, and you're going to see just a slew of capabilities come out over various periods of time with FirmGuard. We've got a very broad vision for it. But as Ben and Jesse will attest to, it's got extreme value right now, and it only gets better over time.
This is one that just came in. We work with nonprofits. Is there a nonprofit discount available?
But please approach us. We'll be happy to work with you. Absolutely, we want to support nonprofits.
Very, very cool. I don't see anything else that came in here. If I've missed it, if you guys want to throw it in the Q&A while we've got a few more minutes here. But as of right now, I appreciate this. This was great, you guys. Allison, thanks for jumping in here, and panelists, thank you for being part of it. I think this was great. Everybody stayed on. So
yeah, no, this was great questions, and Ben and Jesse can't thank you guys enough for joining us today.
Yeah, no.